Okay, so in today's video, I wanted to talk about the Sony ZV-1F. This is the upgrade to the infamous Sony ZV-1. Now, they did give us 3 updates that were just incredible. You get a wider lens, you get USB-C, and you get a better menu system. But I still happen to think that the Sony ZV-1F is a huge disappointment, and I have no intention of buying it. And in today's video, I wanted to explain why. Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tom and this is my camera channel. I make videos about cameras and lenses and stuff like that. So if you're into that, consider subscribing. And if you want to do a small YouTuber a favor, hit that like button. Let's get into it. So last year I got the Sony ZV-1 and this was a beautiful point and shoot vlogging camera. It had a flip out screen, which is very nice. And so you can vlog and stuff like that. Now it's not perfect. It does have some flaws. And one of the biggest flaws, let's face it, it was the biggest flaw. It was the wide angle lens just wasn't wide enough. It's a 24, it's an equivalent to 24-70. It should have been more like 20. And Sony finally released an update to this camera, which has a 20mm equivalent lens. Now, when I first saw this, I was like, yes, this is what we want. This is what I'm gonna get. And I started to watch some reviews to see, you know, what the big hype was all about, if it was more than that, like if it's a good upgrade. And I came to the conclusion that this is not a good camera for a couple of reasons. So first of all, you can actually get a wider field of angle here if you put on like an adapter here, but then it doesn't become as portable. This is a pocket-friendly camera and you want to keep it as such. Now, what they did was they removed the zoom lens altogether and they just put in one single prime lens. I mean, technically this is also a prime lens, but it's a zoom lens, right? So on the Sony ZV-1F, you only have this one angle and it's 20mm and it gets cropped in when you do any type of stabilization and stuff like that. Now, there are a lot of things that they seem to just cut off the camera because they wanted to cut cost, which I get, which is very nice. Unfortunately, here in Sweden, the new Sony ZV-1F costs just as much as this camera. So it sort of becomes this question, if you're considering getting this camera or the newer one, which one should you get? Now, I would pick this one over the other one, and I want to explain why. Let's talk a little bit more about this wide angle lens, right? So it's cool. You finally get that wide angle lens. It's perfect for vloggers. You want to set it up. You want to, use it handheld. It's perfect for that purpose. But there is no built-in ND filter, which is a bit of a shame. However, it's not a huge deal because you can apply the filters on the camera and it's not going to make the camera too huge, so it's not too bad. The one thing that really bothered me, that really stood out as a negative though, is the autofocusing. It's contrast based. It's not like this one. So this one has this eye tracking feature and it works really well. It's what Sony cameras are all about. And the new one, it doesn't really have that. It has contrast based. Now, judging from the examples that I've seen, it seems to look pretty good and it's probably not a bad autofocus, but it still is a step down in my opinion. And so that was a kind of a letdown. Now, when it comes to the USB-C, that's fantastic. Like I would so much prefer if this camera actually had USB-C, but it doesn't. It's a micro USB, which is okay, but it would have been better with USB-C. The menu system, on the back here, it's horrible to use on all Sony cameras, at least the older ones. There is a new updated menu system which comes to certain cameras, and the new Sony ZV-1F does have that new menu system, which is great. I really wish it was on this thing. But then there are just these little tiny things that I just don't like about the Sony ZV-1F. I don't need a zoom lens, I really don't. But it just feels like you're not gaining too much just by having the fixed position lens of 20mm. Now, this is what I like with the GoPro. Like you can get the ultra wide, you can like select these angles inside the camera and it's, it's cropped obviously and stuff like that, but it's still pretty awesome the way it works. So the GoPro is pretty good at that. Now the Sony ZV-1F, I like the idea behind it. I really do, but it should have been a lot less expensive. It just feels like they took away a lot of good things about the Sony ZV-1, but they also removed a lot of good stuff too, and that's where it sort of falls down for me, and I can't commit myself to getting a camera like that if it's actually worse. So one idea is that I could have this one and the new one, but I just don't think I would use it as much, because the biggest problem, in my opinion, with the Sony ZV-1, and it's the same with the newer one, is that the image stabilization is really quite bad. And I've seen some footage and it just doesn't look as good as something on a GoPro or my iPhone 14 Pro. So that's a huge shame. Now, if I'm gonna do vlogging today, I don't have my... Oh, there it is. This is my iPhone 14 Pro. Now, this one is my hands down favorite camera to use right now as a vlogging camera, because the image stabilization is good, the microphone is good, and the Sony ZV-1 and the Sony ZV-1F, it's not where I want it to be. It's not perfect. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of the Sony ZV-1. I like what they've done. I just think that they took one step forward and they took more step backward, and that's a bit of a shame. So for my money's worth, if I was to pick a camera today between the two, it would probably still be the Sony ZV-1, and that's just a personal preference. But let me know in the comment section what you think, which one you would pick and why. Okay, that's all I have for today. Hope you enjoyed this little video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.